What is going on, everyone? Welcome back here to another Lure Lab episode on the Serious Angler Network, and I'm your captain and the host, Andrew Full. As you may notice behind me, we have a new background. I don't remember if I mentioned it in the last episode, but we went through a big move in the Full household. I am now closer to the boat ramp here in Buffalo, in a nice, quiet little town in the south of Buffalo. Very excited, have a beautiful new home. But anyways, I don't want to ramble on about what's going on in my personal life. I hope everybody checked out the last episode where we dove into unique topwater baits with Ryan Hanks with Cast Fishing Co. Really cool story behind those baits. A lot of unique actions, and they will quite possibly catch you a PB bass. So I really hope everyone who tunes in had checked out that episode. But today we have an awesome episode coming up. We have Taylor Watkins coming on of Omega Custom Tackle, and we are going to be diving into spinnerbait fishing and all the knows about willow blades, Colorado blades, and maybe even some painted blades. So without further ado, let's get Taylor on here and get chatting because I don't want to talk all night. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's up? I'm good, bud. How are you?
Not too bad. How's Tennessee?
Oh, Tennessee's good. We're getting ready to rock, buddy. It's the classics here. I guess they start Friday. So yeah. So looking forward to that. Gonna be there all week or all weekend, and it's gonna be busy, but it's gonna be fun.
Now, does Omega have a booth there or just Bait Works?
No, Omega does not have a booth. I think Baitworks might have one, but of course I'll be at Bass Boat Electronics and all my other Pro Guide, all my other sponsors as well. Be hanging out with all those guys and bouncing around and walking around and doing the deal, you know.
Awesome. I wish I was there, but I'm up here in cold New York because, we just had the big move and just it wasn't my year to go, but I will be at every classic until Serious Angler boots me. So I will see you at the next one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm lucky for this one. It's right here in the backyard, so this is nice.
Yeah. How far is Oklahoma for you in a drive? Like 10 hours?
Yeah, it depends on what part. Yeah.
Because I think it's in Tulsa next year. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah. So Grand. So I actually won my first NPFL at Grand.
Oh,
So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
so I
right.
think it's about 11 hours, something like that for me.
That's right. Did you catch him on a spinnerbait?
I did not. I caught him on jig.
Oh, that's even better in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
it was
something
fun.
not many techniques beat a spinnerbait bite, and I'm very excited to talk about it with you today. And a lot of the country right now is still relatively cold with water temps. And there's an elite angler who just absolutely mops up with Colorado spinnerbait. So I figured we would start there, and let's dive right into it. Like, when do you pick up a Colorado blade spinnerbait, and maybe like talk through the single blade, double blade Colorado, and maybe some colors?
Yeah. So to go back, and the specific angler that I think you're talking about is Jason Christie. And so before I owned Omega and was fully endorsed in all of this stuff, I actually won my second NPFL at Lake Cumberland, Kentucky. And it was actually a spinnerbait that was actually same blade combination and everything, but it was actually his spinnerbait. It was actually a covert,
Mm.
and it was in a 3/4 ounce size. But as far as blade combination, it was this exact blade combination right here. This is a number 5 Colorado and a number 3 orange. We call it a kicker Colorado on this combination right here. This specific one is a 1/2 ounce. So I kind of, you kind of talking about blade size. You got to match that blade size with the size of the head that you're throwing. So the one that I was actually throwing, it's around here somewhere. I meant to grab it, but I didn't. But it actually has a number 6 Colorado on it, so a little bit bigger, but it is a 3/4 ounce. So the reason for that is if you oversize these blades too much, that spinnerbait's going to want to roll. And you're not going to be as effective with it. So it's very important to match up these blade sizes with the specific spinnerbait head size and arm that you're throwing. So
Very interesting. Like that's so scientific to me. Like, because I know there's different arm lengths to a spinnerbait. You can change your sizes on spinnerbait blades, especially the Colorado blade. There's real big ones that just like wobble when they come through the water. I don't even know how to like to truly explain the sound that they make and like the water distribution that is caused by it. And my question is, when you go from a two-bladed Colorado blade spinnerbait to a single blade, what application, like what time frame would you go to that single one? And do you upsize the blade for a single to kind of balance it out to stop the roll? Like, how do you determine how to craft a perfect spinnerbait with a single blade as opposed to a dual blade?
So most of the time, me personally, I like the dual blade. I like having the orange kicker blade on there. I think, 90% of the time wherever I'm throwing this spinnerbait, it's going to be in dirty water, dirty, muddy, usually cold water, because those Colorados are, like you talked about, going to put that thump. It's going to have, some vibration to it. Those fish can find it, use their lateral lines to find that bait. And one of the times that I do just throw the single is I used to do a lot of night fishing.
Mm.
And so, you would go to the dark colors, you would go to black and purple, things like that. And then that's wherever I would really go to just the single blade on there. And and most of the time I would throw that darker colored blade then too at night.
So it
Uh,
would match the skirting of the spinnerbait.
yeah, and I mean, really, the only time you have to worry about flash at night is whenever you've got a moon. Whenever you got a bright moon. We used to throw a half and half, a half black and a half silver, and that seemed to make a big difference whenever you had a moon. So as far as just throwing a single blade, I think it's personal preference, really. I mean, I don't know that there's advantages one way or the other. I do know, you know, if you do put this small number 3 kicker on there, you're definitely going to be able to slow this spinnerbait down. So when that comes into play is whenever you're in that colder water. The colder the water is, you want to slow this thing down. You just want to you want those blades just barely rolling and keeping that spinnerbait down on the bottom.
Hmm. Now, like, kind of get into the skirt color choices. Like, yeah, cold water, you have muddy water. We talked about the orange blade in the size 3. Like, kind of go from clear, like muddy water, all the way to clear water. Are there different color spinnerbaits you would choose from, or do you usually just have like one or two that you like to pick up and roll with?
So actually, during that tournament, so that actual Cumberland tournament, we had a huge rain that had come. The lake rose 15 feet in 2.5 days. So what happened there was, parts of the lake were super blown out, super muddy. I mean, not even 6 inches visibility. So whenever I was in that type of watercolor, I was throwing, a spinnerbait just like this, which is what I ended up catching most of my weigh fish on. My what I call my bigger fish, that I weighed, ended up coming on this spinnerbait right here. But I had two different ones tied on at that time, and the other one was, a spinnerbait like this with uh, two silver willows on there and more of a natural type skirt. This one, I think we call this one crappie. More of a natural colored skirt. And what I was doing with this one was the further you went back in those creeks, that water had cleared up,
Hmm.
and it just had a little stain to it. Like it went from muddy to just a little stain
So like that
to
emerald
clear.
green with like a little bit of brown mixed in.
Yep. Or even one like this. This is actually a war eagle, and I actually think this was probably the exact color that I was throwing during that tournament. I think this is Spot Remover is the color of this one. And so yeah, so that was the color, but I did have this blade combination set up on it with 2 silvers, and that was just getting in that cleaner, clear water, going from the gold to the silver, double silver blades.
I like it. So, do you ever throw like a trailer bait on the back of it, like on a Colorado? We talked about Jason Christie, and he was like a Yum Pulse shed. I think he throws on a big boot tail swim bait, and he takes the skirt off the spinner bait on the Colorado blade, especially on Grand. We've seen it numerous times when they've had a camera on them. Do you do anything like that with your Colorado spinner baits?
So the one that I like with this one, with this Colorado, double Colorado, I just like the Zoom twin tail, just the straight tails. You've already got the drag, you've got these big blades putting off a lot of thump, and you're letting the blades do the work, and so this would be the type of trailer that I would match up and pair up with this specific spinner bait and that kind of combination. Now, moving into different situations, I really only throw 2 trailers. I throw this one, and then I throw the Fat Albert twin tail. And the difference between the two, whenever I change up, is I'll throw the Fat Albert if I'm throwing a double willow and I want to slow that bait down. So the Fat Albert, just with those 2 legs on there kicking, I mean, that's wherever that bait you really slow it down. And then the other part of it is too, I call it floating a spinner bait. So if you're throwing it in laydowns and those fish are looking up and you're not really wanting to get that bait down in the laydowns, I'll put this Fat Albert on there, and it'll really help that spinner bait just kind of wherever it pops over. You've seen a spinner bait where it pops over the limb and it does its little deal. That particular trailer right there, that Fat Albert, will really allow that spinner bait to just kind of sit there.
It just kind of hovers.
It hovers. And wherever that spinner bait pops over that limb and it hovers, that's usually wherever you're going to get that bite. Now, if you're throwing a trailer like this, it's going to pop over and then kind of start to sink. So this is the 2 main trailers that I use on my spinner baits. I will use a boot tail at times, but I'd say 95% of the time I'm throwing one of these 2.
I like it. I do have a question before we do move on to double willow bladed spinnerbaits, and this is arguably my favorite double willow spinnerbait of all time, and they stopped making it. Have you ever seen the Jackal Super Eruption?
I have not.
Okay, so if you can find them, grab them, even though you make the Omega custom tackle ones now, right? So it's a hover technique spinnerbait. So when you'd pop it over a piece of structure, it would literally hover, but as it fell, the blades would spin normal instead of slapping all over the place.
Okay. And would it fall horizontal or it trying?
No, horizontal.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, just like standard spinnerbait position. You just had to kind of feed it with the rod tip and it would slowly fall and those blades would spin normal. It was crazy. I have one left and I'm terrified to throw because it will be gone after 2 fish. So because they just fall apart after 2 bites.
Well, so we might have to redesign that in the Omega lab.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'll see if I can find pictures of it, and because the one I have now is mangled and it still works, so it wouldn't be a good one to redesign. But I'll see if I can find some pictures of it and send it over to you because that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would. Yeah,
that's a good spinnerbait. But anyways, let's dive into it. Right, like willow blades. This is my favorite. I throw willow bladed spinnerbaits like 99% of the time when I do spinnerbait fish because I feel like you can still fish real slow with them, but you can also burn them if they're tuned properly and they have the right blade combination. So when will Taylor Watkins throw a willow bladed spinnerbait?
I throw a willow blade, like I said before, whenever I get in that kind of cleaner type water, and then I throw the willow where I'm looking for speed. So that's kind of, I think we saw each other at Red Crest, and I think you picked up one of these. Maybe it was the coleslaw one. Did you pick up coleslaw?
Coleslaw with 2 white blades.
Yeah. So I've got the orange kicker on this one, but I will. So one cool thing about our spinnerbait is you can take this dude right here like this, and we can pop it off, and I can change them out. So if I wanted to go coleslaw with the double willow, I just take this off like that. And now, and of course I put it on backwards, didn't I? I would put it on backwards.
First try for everything, right?
That's right. I mean, it wouldn't be right if I didn't, you know. So
that's good. It happens.
Yeah. So now we went coleslaw. That's the exact spinnerbait that you bought, ain't it?
Yeah, that thing is nasty. It's gonna catch some fish.
So, but usually I go with the double willow like this right here whenever I'm looking for that speed. So, you know, smallmouth, spotted bass, different things like that. I'm looking to keep that bait moving quick, not let them get a good look at it. So typically that's whenever I'm going to go double willow. And then, you know, of course, I mean, a lot of people like the willow to Colorado, small Colorado. I'm not a huge fan of it. You know, I'm either a double willow guy or a double Colorado guy. And
I agree with that.
It's just I don't know why. I can't explain why, but it just always seems like whenever I throw that combo right there, I'll throw it for 20 minutes and not get a bite, and I'm like, I got to get a double willow, you know, or vice versa, you know. So
well, fishing is all confidence.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's a good reason to stick to your guns and throw what you have confidence in. Now that dude right there, that is nice to the eyes.
This is a 1 ounce spinnerbait here, and I thought I got 2 of them out.
Okay, let's dive in there real fast while you're looking for the 1 ouncer. Like, when do you choose what spinnerbait weight to throw from? Like, because they make them in all different sizes, right? Like quarter, 3/8, half, 3/4, 5/8, 1.5 ounce. Like, when do you choose which size to throw where and when?
So 90% of it is depth. I would say 10% of it is the size of the forage that is around. So, you know, even if you're throwing a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait, a lot of guys throw, including myself, I'll throw a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait in the fall, wherever you got a bunch of little small shad. Now, I'm going to pick up 1 ounce. The guys out at Lake of the Ozarks throw this a lot, and they're throwing this over the tops of those brush piles. So you're talking about brush piles that are in 15, you know, 18, 20 feet, sometimes 25 feet. And they're actually throwing this bait out, letting it sink down. And now, you know, before they would throw this spinnerbait, they would just have a brush pile marked on their, you know, unit, line up, throw it, let it go down to the bottom, start slow rolling it, and then bring this through the brush pile. Nowadays, with live scope, you know, you're throwing it out, watching it go down, and then you're rolling that spinnerbait just barely right over the top of that brush pile, you know, right in their face. So as far as size goes, though, depth and what I'm trying to do with it, and what a big part of it is, especially on a large spinnerbait like this, is blade size. So that all goes back to that speed. So even though this is a 1 ounce spinnerbait, I think this is a number 6 blade here, and this is a number 5. This spinnerbait's going to still go slow. It's still going to be a slow retrieve. And what's happening is those blades are really slowing that bait down. It has the weight to get down deep to those brush piles, but where you start winding it, you can still do that super slow retrieve. Whereas if I took the blades off of this spinnerbait right here, you can tell the blade size difference I hope you can tell. I'm not
Oh
sure.
yeah, I can see it. It looks like what is it like a 4 and a 3 probably,
That,
or a 5 and a
that's
4?
that's a 4.5 and a 4 on that one, and this is a 6 and a 5 on this one. So if I took these blades off of this 1/2 ounce right here, it would still work on this 1 ounce spinnerbait, but this going to be rolling. I mean, you're gonna be burning that dude.
If a
So
smallie eats that as you're burning a 1 ounce spinnerbait, you're gonna need new forearms after 4 or 5 days.
I could get into some of that.
Like, just a fair warning,
Yeah,
especially if there's any current involved. Oh my,
yeah.
like, it's gonna be like running into a brick wall with your eyes closed.
Yep. And so that's another thing too, whenever you're talking about current. If you're throwing the spinnerbait in current, I used to fish the Coosa River a lot, and we would wash a spinnerbait in the current, and it's all about blade size and weight. You've got to get those in unison to get that bait in that strike zone, whatever that strike zone is. And you can change so much, and that's what I love about our spinner baits is you can change this top blade so easy, and I can put a bigger one or smaller one and change things up on the fly, and that way hey, I've got more current today, I need to get down a little bit further. Well, let me take this 4 off and put a 3 on, and then help that spinnerbait get down a little bit further. Or I want to slow it down, let me change trailers, let me put a different trailer on, and that'll help that spinnerbait stay up higher in the strike zone.
I do. I know you like the Zoom spinnerbait trailer. Have you ever tried to put like a super fluke or like a caffeine shed on the back of a spinnerbait?
Yeah, so like a straight tail.
Yeah.
So what happens with that is you've got more meat there, so that adds to the weight of the spinnerbait. So that's gonna again change the speed of retrieve that you've got. And that's what it's all about. Like, man, people think about spinnerbaits and they think you just throw it out there and wind it in. Well, spinnerbaits are so far from throw it out there and wind it in. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of really good spinnerbait makers out there that make good ones, but the guys that can pick up a spinnerbait and understand where in the water column that blade is going and the technique that they're wanting to use it for.
Yeah, like if you want to fish it through laydowns or on a grass edge or skipping it underneath in a long dock. So like one of my really good friends, basically like a mentor of mine, bass fishing around Western New York, used to kick everyone's tail on a little Stanley Vibra wedge. I don't know if you remember those spinner baits,
Yeah.
like a 3/8 or a 1/4 ounce, and he throw it on a pistol grip casting rod so he can get real tight, like a 6 foot or a 5'6" pistol grip casting rod and skip it around docks. And back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I think he went on a roll of winning like almost every other tournament in like the local club scene here in Western New York in the Finger Lakes, throwing that little vibra wedge spinnerbait on just a pistol grip and a 1/4 ounce, and it had to be fire perch. That was the
Wow.
only color he threw. Yeah,
Wow.
like
So
the last time I was at his house for reference, he had an entire pegboard row basically donated to that spinnerbait. I think he had like 50 of them. And the old school ones before Stanley discontinued them and brought them back,
yeah,
still in the package. And I was
yeah.
like, man, I need those.
So let's talk about this one a little bit more. The
Yeah.
one that you bought at Redcrest. I want to ask you what is your application for this particular coleslaw with the white blades?
The coleslaw white blade spinnerbait is going to come out for me when I have the nastiest weather with current for smallmouth on the Niagara River by me. I have a few docks and a couple trees that lay in the water that I can call smallmouth out with that spinnerbait, but it has to be cloudy, rainy. I just need something that's a little bit different with the light refraction. I feel like the white blades on a cloudy, rainy day really stick out. But the biggest thing is like you just need low level clouds, a little bit of rain. If it's real windy, then I'll go back to like the hammered blades or silver blades. I wanted just low light, kind of calm, but nasty rain downpour so I can really see it pop.
Yeah.
And they can't stand that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I live here in Knoxville, and we were actually talking about this at Redcrest. I think I told you um, the Major League Fishing guys are at Douglas and Cherokee right now, and it's almost the same way with this spinnerbait with the smallmouth down here.
Hmm.
But we don't typically have the laydowns and all that stuff because it's such a drawdown in the spring.
Yeah.
We have the major drawdowns on these lakes in the spring, but you can take this spinnerbait and absolutely burn it, and the smallmouth will just destroy it.
Yeah. So another thing you can do too, I had a friend that used to, the same guy that has the vibro wedge, he would put chartreuse blades on a coleslaw spinnerbait just to change it up so you could throw the white, they don't eat it, come back through with the chartreuse blades and they would come unglued on it.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's all based on the light. It had to be super low light, super low clouds and rainy and calm water, but you need current and they will just, our smallmouth up here will unglue on that thing.
yeah.
It's very situational based.
So, do you think that the spinnerbait is a lost art, or is it still? And a lot of guys, do they lot? Is there a lot of guys out there that still throw it, or no?
Where I'm at, not really. I feel like some days I'm like one of like very few who throw spinnerbait. And this past fall, me and my buddy Brad, who actually is on his way to the Lake of the Ozarks as we're recording this to fish, was it the TBF
National
qualifier?
championship. Yeah,
Yeah, on Lake of the Ozarks. And we're fishing a little private lake tournament. The guys around here call it the Lime Lake Elite Series event because there's like 7 or 8 local guys that go down and throw $100 in the pot. And our first 3 or 4 bites of the day came on a spinnerbait. And he's like, man, I haven't thrown a spinnerbait in so long. He's like, give me one. I literally had to go back in my box and throw him one
yeah.
because they were eating it. And then they got off of it once the sun came out and it was all jig the rest of the day. But yeah.
So where I was going with that, and the reason I asked you that question is I would like your viewers, the people that watch the Lure Lab, uh, how long has it been since you've thrown spinnerbait?
That's a great question.
Like, and why not? So, um, spinnerbait was it was one of those baits, almost like the Alabama rig, that like they wanted to make it illegal. A spinnerbait's going to catch every bass in the lake. Well, if it's not getting thrown as much these days, I think it's a great option to tie back on and get to throwing it again. It is situational. You definitely have to be in the right situation to throw it. But I think me personally, I'm starting to lean on it a little more than I used to in the past 5 to 8 years.
Oh, especially with everybody on like the bladed jig craze, right?
That's
Like
exactly right.
I have seen, and that's why I recently picked it back up like 2 or 3 years ago as in the spinnerbait because I've been slowly watching the bladed jig bite decline. And I'm like, okay, the same situations I would throw a bladed jig, a spinnerbait would excel and do the same exact thing. I just gotta keep it a little bit higher in the water column or keep it out of the weeds or find the one that comes through the weeds really well and rip it through. And oh man,
It-
like especially once we hit like September, almost always have a spinnerbait tied on.
and
Always.
I think that's one reason that a lot of people are going to the bladed jig is because the bladed jig is so easy to just change your water column, and all you gotta do is change your rod tip or, change the speed of your retrieve or change a trailer. That's it. Whenever you get into spinnerbaits and stuff, you've got so many different options and so many different things that affect that spinnerbait in so many different ways. But if you can ever master it and get to it, and figure it out and spend some time with it, I think in the next, I don't know, at least 5 to 10 years for sure, that I think the spinnerbait will probably make a comeback. I don't know, I really paid attention to Major League Fishing this weekend. It was close to me and everything, and there was a couple of guys that really got on a spinnerbait bite. Now it died whenever the weather changed,
Mm-hmm.
but I know for a fact Zach Burge is one of our guys, and he came down to the Omega where we keep everything and do all our stuff. And he came through and we built him some spinner baits and did some stuff. And the first day of practice, man, he was just sending me pictures. Just, dude, I'm crushing them.
Nailed it. Put it on the site.
Yeah, yeah. So,
That's awesome.
but yeah, oh yeah, and it was a color that we don't make, of course, you know. And he's like, "Dude, you gotta start making this color." And I was like, "Well, you go win a tournament on it, and we'll put it on for sure," you know. So, but when I, coming full circle, there are a lot of guys. There are some guys out there that are throwing it, but I think they're not talking about it as much as people realize.
Yeah, and like, was it the only guy that ever seems to win tournaments with the spinnerbait is Jason Christie. So, and he's just open about it. He throws it all the time. He loves that dang thing.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if that happened here in about 4 days.
Yeah, I don't know if you tuned into our fantasy fishing show, but I basically said, I was like, if Jason Christie figures out where to get him on a Colorado bladed spinnerbait, watch out, because he's going to catch 5 big ones a day.
Yeah,
This is one of those techniques that I personally think you can throw a spinnerbait on at any like variable conditions. Like it could be sunny with wind and they'll eat it. It could be, if you have the right spinnerbait in the cold, muddy water and sun, you can catch them on a Colorado blade.
yeah.
If it's
This dude right here is just deadly this time
yeah,
of year. I mean, it is deadly.
yeah.
So
I think like 4 or 5 of like my top 10 biggest bass, largemouth and smallmouth in Western New York in the Finger Lakes region have come on spinnerbaits.
now the truth comes out.
I always have one. Yeah, like I almost always have one, but sometimes I don't pull it out, or I'll pick it up and throw one cast and like doesn't feel right, and I'll put it back down. But I always try to keep it honest.
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
So I thoroughly enjoy a good spinner blade bite. It's fun. So, but I do have another question before I hit you with our absolute last question, and it's trailer hooks. Seems to be like, it's not a controversial topic. I can't even talk, like as I said at the beginning of the show, but do you add a trailer hook? Because I personally am a person who does not use one. I feel like if they're on a spinnerbait bite, they're going to get it. And I feel like I lose too many fish with the trailer hook.
I used to keep trailer hooks in my box, and to be honest with you, I made a new box this year. Didn't even put any in there.
I like it.
And I'm the same way with you. It's I think if you have the right combination and the right color, and they're eating a spinnerbait, it doesn't matter. And I think that hook back there flinging around and gets all hung up, you can't hardly throw a trailer with it, and especially a twin tail like this, like it constantly gets hung in the legs, and it's just more of a headache to me than it's worth. I mean, I personally I don't throw a trailer hook on it.
Yeah. Thank you for clearing that up. I am full on the no trailer hook bandwagon as well. I know everyone's like, you got to throw it, you won't miss. I'm like, well, if they're missing it, that means they don't want it.
That's
So
right.
I'll pick up something else at that point.
Yep.
But like, and I think like a spinnerbait is one of the greatest search tools ever known to bass fishing, because you can just roll it and bass will show themselves, kind of like a big glide bait or a mag draft. Like it's one of those visual baits that on the right day you can see that baby hovering just underneath the surface, and all of a sudden you'll see them miss it by like 4 feet, but you're like, I know where you are, and you can throw your secondary or follow-up bait at them and catch them. So it's just always being in tune with it. But Taylor, do you want the last question?
Let's go for it.
All right. So our last question is always customized by Do It Molds, and kind of cool. You can actually make your own spinnerbaits at Do It Molds if you want. But the Do It Molds juice of the show is, if there's one piece of advice or modification that you would give someone who lacks confidence in throwing a spinnerbait, what would it be?
I don't know about modification wise, but I will show you something about a spinnerbait. So I don't know if this is fair or not. I might be cheating, but all right. So our spinnerbaits are made. They have some partial titanium attributes to them. But one attribute to this wire that we use is it is very customizable. So you can bend it and change it and it will actually stay in place. So what I do is, let's do this one right here. This one will be better. All right. This spinnerbait right here, like we talked about earlier, is a double willow crappie skirt. And we're throwing this in more, clearer water. And what I'll do with this spinnerbait is if I want this spinnerbait to go faster and deeper, I will actually bend this spinnerbait down like this and get it super tight. See that, how tight that blade got right there? And that's really going to narrow that spinnerbait up. Now, if I want to slow it down, I'm going to spread it out like this and really spread those blades out a lot and really open it up. I'm kind of over exaggerating a little bit because I want to really show you what I'm talking about. But I really want to open that spinnerbait up and open it up wide like that. And whenever you open that spinnerbait up wide, that's going to slow it down.
Yeah, you have
That's
to real slower too, because it will start to roll on you or rock to the side.
yeah. So that's a real quick modification that you can make with a spinnerbait that can make a big difference. And especially like I've noticed a lot of times guys will be catching them on a spinnerbait and like they'll catch one on it and then they'll just kind of pick it back up and start throwing it again and not get bit. Well, what's happened is that wire's got out of whack, and it's not right. Something's not right about it. So always check it. And if you're wanting to check your spinnerbait, grab the bottom of the hook right here, point it straight at you, just like this, and you can tweak it whichever way you want to tweak it, just like that, left or right, and make sure that spinnerbait is in a perfectly straight line. You want it to be in a good, perfect straight line. And wherever you hold it like that, a lot of guys want to hold it like this, and they want to look at it like that, or hold it out here like this to the
Yeah, you
side
ain't
or
seen it from like that.
something like that. But if you'll grab it down here at the hook and you point that spinnerbait right at you, you can tell exactly what you need to do to move that wire around and make sure that spinnerbait is perfectly straight.
I like it. Thank you. That's some great advice. Besides changing out the blades and making it fall faster or rise or speed up your retrieve with it, like there's a lot that I feel like a spinnerbait is a lot more technical than people give it credit for.
It,
And,
yeah,
and if you
it's
want
one
to
of
get
those
good at
baits. Yeah, it's one of those baits that a lot of people think you just throw it out there and reel it in.
it,
It's not that at all.
well, I can't tell you, like, just when I fish docks with the spinner, like roll cast it and rod tip up, and as it comes closer to the boat, you drop the rod tip or you give it a couple shakes and pauses, like, and that's always when your bite comes, like when you change your rod position or hop it once or twice, like just
Bump
you,
something, bump a rock, bump something.
you want those blades doing all kinds of weird things. I apologize if that made a really loud noise with my hand hitting the mic, but yeah, that's what you want a spinnerbait to do. You want it to make noise.
Yep.
So, well, Taylor, thanks for joining me here today on the Lure Lab. I'm going to let you get out of here and we're going to wrap up the show here. But I want to say thank you again for coming on. Enjoy Knoxville as everyone is tuning into this. If you see Taylor walking around the expo, if you're listening to this Saturday on your way to the Classic Expo, make sure you stop and say hi to him and
Yeah.
check out some spinnerbaits. I'm sure they'll be there somewhere. So,
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Well, I'm going to let you go now and we will chat soon. All right.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Of course. Have a good one. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Lure Lab, where we really dived into the nitty gritty of spinner baits from Colorado blades, willow blades, even some painted, and that little pesky orange blade that probably some of you were wondering about why and when do we throw it. But as always, if you are tuned in on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below if you still throw a spinnerbait, maybe what your favorite spinnerbait is, color combo, all the above. I love reading those comments. If you're tuned in on MP3 like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review. That helps this show be seen by other bass heads like you and I alike. And We truly appreciate all the support. And until next week, we will catch you then.